It's my honor to introduce Michelle today. I've worked closely with Michelle since the summer of 2016 when she was a fellow in the Lamp Summer Institute. I'll never forget the evening in a dark basement Hell's Kitchen that we first spoke at length. I began to come to know Michelle as the perfect synergy of an analytic astronomy and physics scholar and a holistic liberal arts thinker. After only 1 week of intensive pedagogical learning, Michelle dove into curriculum design, creating some of the most innovative teaching games that I've ever encountered. Michelle's teaching prowess only grew from there until she was redesigning the summer session of general physics. In 2017, Michelle was selected from amongst a number of outstanding candidates and by 5 committee members as the LAMP graduate assistant. In this role, she's taken the helm in building the program that allows undergraduates and College of Ed postbacks to get an authentic practicum in innovative active learning classrooms. Not only did Michelle play a large role in building this program, but thoroughly assessed every single step. Today we will hear a bit more. So 2 weeks ago, I attended the Original Lily Conference in Oxford, Ohio with Michelle, and for the second time she presented. This year, her session was attended by a large number of experts in the field of SOTL. In fact, one of the founding members of the Original Lily, a poet laureate and an honors STEM instructor, attended Michelle's session. She gave great accolades, and I know that she saw in Michelle the same multidimensional qualities that I saw in her during that first dinner. So just like Hell's Kitchen, Michelle has a surface of dark, unapologetic sardony. But look a little closer and you'll find the depth and dimension that blows your mind. So Michelle, it's been one heck of a ride.
Most descriptions of me. One time someone described me as a spicy chicken sandwich. That wasn't as good. Okay, so thank you, Rachel, for that introduction. So it's, all 4 of you know Mike when he gets in one day. My name's Michelle. I have been working with the LA program since 2017 when I was selected as the LAMP fellow, and my original study was going to be much more big and not focused on the LA program, and then this semester when we were doing the LA orientation, Rachel was like, maybe you should focus on just the LA program because that's what you've been working with extensively. Like, that actually makes a lot more sense than this huge undertaking, which was honestly probably more PhD level work with the amount that I've given myself to do. So I decided to focus in on exactly how the LAs and the mentors that are part of the LA program are feeling about their experience. It's still a relatively new program, so we are really interested in not only making sure that the students are benefiting from the experience, but that we're not giving undue pressure to our professors and our LAs. So with that, I decided to explore the impact of a learning assistant program on the LAs and their mentors, and I did so using a qualitative case study. So this is my beautiful outline intro where I talk about why we need to do this, methodology where I talk about how I did it, findings where I talk about my results, and then conclusions basically saying it's all good. So with the introduction, as David Blackwell said, I'm not interested in doing research and I never have been. And when I read that, I'm like, oh, I can't say that at my thesis defense. But I really like the second part. I'm interested in understanding, which is quite a different thing, and I think that is very, very true. I hate doing research, but I love knowing things, and I love learning things. So, there's no one who already knows the thing, and I have to be the one to figure it out. I guess I can do that if the end result means I know a new thing. So, just a background on what's going on is there is a projected 1 million STEM major deficit in the coming years. For a number of reasons, it's said that 17% of high school graduating seniors are interested in math and proficient enough in math to actually pursue STEM in the first place. And of those 17%, assuming they all go into STEM, which we all know they're not going to. But let's just say best case scenario, of those 17% of high school seniors who want to go into STEM, only about 40 of them end up finishing, 40% of them end up finishing their STEM degree as originally intended, and that statistic drops to about 20% for underrepresented groups. And most of them are driven away by the large entry-level courses where students just don't really get that much face time with their professors. They don't feel supported. They feel lost in a sea of other people also struggling. So between the lack of people going into STEM and the very bad retention of people in STEM, there is a very big gap in what we need for the job market and what the amount of people are actually going into that job market. So the solution that many people have been going for the past couple of decades are active learning and active learning strategies better engage students with a wider range of learning activity, which result in higher learning gains. In this image from Smith et al. 23 using the COPAS metric, which I will admit I forget what COPAS stands for in this very moment, but that's okay. Just basically shows the difference between what professors and students are doing in a regular traditional class, where the students are largely listening and a little bit of questioning. The professors are largely lecturing with a little bit of answering questions and a little bit of asking follow-ups. As opposed to a active learning class where you just see all the very pretty colors, many different styles of many different practices that people are engaging in. So we said, okay, in order to retain all our STEM majors, the few that we actually are able to get into our class, we have to go for these active learning strategies. Active learning is very hard to do in a 200-person lecture. Seating style seating, 1 person to 200 ratio, not very good. Very, very hard to do, but we are in this problem where Wyman says any college or university that is teaching a STEM course by traditional lecture is providing an inferior education to our students. So we know what to do, we know we should do it. The question is, how? Logistically. Ideally, of course, every class would be 20 people, but who has the time or space for that? Enter the learning assistant model. The learning assistant model was developed at CU Boulder at least 15 years ago, I believe. It's the earliest reference towards it that I can find. And it aims to take the traditional model that's very stage on stage, instructor pontificating to all their students, and redistributes the workload into more of a web that you see in the bottom left corner there, where the instructor relies on their LAs, and their LAs then move between different student groups. So couple of restraints there. First, we need the LAs there, which means we need the LA program, and second of all, we need infrastructure. So that's the new building that we're building, which I hear is actually being built now. It's actually being built now. So this paper addresses only one of those, the actual presence of the LAs in the room. So with the learning assistants, who I should back up and say, learning assistants are typically skilled undergraduates who have taken the course before or an equivalent or higher course, and help the instructor implement active learning strategies, largely through facilitating group discussion and asking questions and just generally being there for the students. Our learning assistant program has expanded to the post-bac students because in a collaborative effort with the College of Education, Rachel found that the post-bacs were not well served. They had absolutely no teaching experience before they went out on their student teaching. So in order to give them some experience in the classroom, we included postbacks, and this semester was the first time we included 2 graduate students to serve as LAs as well. So the LA program, SU Boulder, Imagine It, is just undergraduates, but we've extended it to anyone who really can or is willing to do it and who needs the experience. And the funding, let's not forget that. So the main goals of an LA program, they call them synergistic because they all feed into each other, as you can see by the arrows pointing every which way. Part of it, as CU Boulder Imagined It, teacher recruitment and preparation. They in particular were trying to recruit K through 12 physics teachers, the most in demand of all the subjects out there, because most physics classes are taught by someone who majored in chemistry at best. Oftentimes a biological science major who took A physics classes said, there you go, you know science. Have fun, describing Newton. So they really wanted to recruit K through 12 teachers, and in an effort to give them, not only give them practice in their classroom, but to really just find more people who didn't initially want to be a teacher, maybe bring them over. They're looking for institutional change, lowering the student-to-teacher ratio, increasing learning gains, retention of STEM majors, all those good things. So really institutional on the pedagogy scale. Curriculum and course transformation, again, it's easy to just get up and talk to people about something that you've been studying for years. It's a lot harder to actually get the students interested in interacting with it. So in order to engage students more, there needed to be more support. So that's another point where the LA program comes in. And lastly, discipline-based educational research, which is kind of like what I'm doing right now. If you are familiar with the scholarship of teaching and learning, doing research on your own teaching, this is an LA program is a means to facilitate that, where you try something new and you write about how well it worked or how it didn't work. So those were the program goals of the LA program as set up by C.U. Mulder in Ontario 2010. That's where that image comes from. And then lastly are the three pillars of the LA experience: content, pedagogy, and practice. Content is when the LAs meet weekly with their faculty mentor in order to review the content that they're going to be going over the next week to make sure the LAs are up to scratch. If there is, like for my LAs, no one understands TORC, so I really had to work with them before the class covered TORC to make sure that the LAs were ready to answer those questions that the students were inevitably going to have. The second pillar was pedagogy. I teach a 1-unit seminar in the room next door, where we talk about the various different aspects of science pedagogy. It's really a crash course for the LAs who otherwise really wouldn't have any experience in teaching, don't even know what the word pedagogy is. So we give them a crash course in how to do, okay, Bridge, you're gonna have to help me, collaborative communication, we do diversity, equity, inclusion, assessment, how to ask good questions. They have to write a teaching philosophy. That's only like 5 weeks. There's definitely
Growth mindset.
What's that?
Growth mindset.
Oh yeah, growth mindset, curiosity, grit, motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. So we talk to them about all these different things that go into education that a teacher should keep in mind. Things that they, again, probably never have thought about more than, I don't want to do this assignment, I'm not motivated, which is where I am with my last class. I just really don't want to do my last assignment because I feel like this should be it. But it's not, unfortunately. And then the last pillar is practice. That's the LAs being in the classroom, actually facilitating active learning and discussions and asking students questions and giving them extra resources. So those are the three main things that an LA does. So in regards to my particular study, I wanted to do a program evaluation. I wanted to do it, and I also had to do it because it's part of my job as the LAMP fellow for this. So I had to do a program evaluation, and we didn't have a metric set up for it really, so I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick little qualitative study, see how things are going. I did, in 2018, write a study about the pilot year of the program. We did ask the LAs how things were going, what needed improvement, and we kind of fixed the nuts and bolts of the program, or some of the things that were, you know, squeaky gears. But I didn't really dive too much into how their perceptions have changed, how they really feel about the experience. It was more help me make the program better by giving me your insight. So this was much more in-depth of how the LAs and the mentors were feeling about their experience. My specific research question, I just said it. How do LAs and faculty mentors feel about their experiences as part of the LA program? I left out the student aspect of it, like student input, how they feel about having LAs in the classroom for a couple reasons. One, there's a lot of students, and I could not reasonably get that done this semester. Second of all, student bias is a very real thing, and I thought before I go ahead diving into students' feedback of the course, I would get the people who are actually working with the LA program, chose to be part of it. I wanted to see what their perceptions were, and I'll leave the student input for someone else to do at a later date. And as far as the significance of this, first of all, as I said, we need to do program evaluations to make sure that the LA program is actually working and not just a big old hot mess that people are just putting up with. So we needed to do that. So we need to inform LAMP about the progress of the program. And more broadly, given a high level of fittingness, this kind of study can help out other institutions who might be interested in starting an LA program but aren't really sure what they're getting their LAs and their faculty mentors into. So again, only if there's a high level of fittingness can that help others, but there is a potential that another institution can find a study like this useful. And as far as the scope of this is a purely qualitative study. I left out all quantitative aspects such as GPAs, course grades, DFWI rates, largely because of time constraints, but even more largely because the university holds on to that data, and it's very hard to get a hold of, right?
We're working
Very hard to get a hold of. So that was just not going to happen. Again, someone else will do that later. But given that I couldn't really analyze the quantitative data, I chose to do a purely qualitative study. And I'm probably going to get those wrong at some point. So just be aware of it. So moving on to methodology. As you can read in Of Mystics and Mistakes, I'm not here to speak the truth. I'm just here to give you a method to perceive it. So this is what I did. Starting with my positionality. Eric Tiemann, who I'm very sad is not here, I really should have badgered him to be here, but he probably wouldn't come anyway, says a qualitative researcher needs to make their positionality known. Positionality being any social and political context that influences one's researcher identity. Quantitative researchers don't really have to do this because numbers kind of speak for themselves. Maybe you need a little bit of explanation for it. But the thing with qualitative research is that it is very subjective, and no one's saying that it's not subjective, but your positionality is a way to kind of lay it all out for people. These are my subjectivities, and I'm going to hopefully have those limit my data analysis minimally, but realistically, we all know that it can't be completely removed. So just acknowledging that this is where I come from, this is what I'm going to try to do in order to be as neutral as possible. So my researcher stance, me as a researcher, I have been an astronomer since 3rd grade. Not officially, you know, no one in 3rd grade said you're going to be an astronomer, but I decided I was going to know everything about the universe. So yeah, I'm a graduate student in astronomy. I got a little sidetracked when I discovered education when I did Rachel Summer Institute. I had no clue what kind of path would take me down. So I am an astronomer and I am a Lennett Fellow, and I do research in both those respects. So scale balance both one way or another at times. As far as my philosophical stance is how I view the how I view the universe and how I view understanding of the universe. I'm a constructivist. So social constructionism tells us that society plays a big role in how we understand the world. In America, we know certain norms. Over in the Middle East, they have very different norms as social constructionism. And then interpretivism means that your own individual history greatly affects how you perceive and how you react to different events. So even though we're all in here American, we all have very different backstories, so any given event we will react to differently. The two of those together makes me a constructivist. So the way I interpret knowledge is through my own lens, largely informed by the society that I grew up in. That's at least how I view qualitative research. In science, I'm a post-positivist, which means I do believe there's a right way to do it, but I don't think we can know it 100% for certain. That does not work for people. People are too crazy to be post-positivist in my belief. So I believe in qualitative research. This is just my understanding of the knowledge. Someone else could look at the exact same data and come up with something different. I hope that my analysis was rigorous enough that people would tend to agree with what I said. And then lastly is my aspirational ethics stance. There are things called procedural ethics, which is kind of basic society ethics. You know, don't trip a pregnant lady. That's procedural ethics. You just know not to do that. I would like to hold myself to a higher standard than just don't trip pregnant women. So I use layman's culturally responsive reflexive relational ethics. Meaning I respond to my participants and I am reflexive and reflect on my practice, and I'm relational in that I try to commiserate and not just be this very cold interviewer. So that's the ethics stance that I try to hold myself to when carrying out this study. That in mind, I set out to do my study. So an online survey was sent out in 2019. The questions were loosely based off of the questionnaire that I used for, or the interview questions that I used for the LAs that I conducted in 2018, but there are some difference. The online surveys were complete and anonymous, but faculty in LAs had different surveys, very similar, but slightly different surveys. So I had 6 faculty members and 7 LAs, and because they were anonymous and I did not know who was who, I just went ahead and I pseudonym them using the phonetic alphabet. And then this fall, I had semi-structured interview. Some were in person. Some had to be digital because people just could not find the time to meet because they're very busy, and I totally understand. I will take a digital interview if I have to. So the 6 faculty members that participated in interviews: Nicole, Harry, Ryan, Jackie, Cece, and Monica, and then 7 LAs, current LAs and past LAs, or Gail, Ellie, Victoria, Joe, and Marshall, and then the 1 LAMP director, Teresha, which no one knows. No one knows who that is. For the sake of the paper, no one knows who that is. And because I know who my interview participants were, but I don't know who my online participants were, there were somewhere between 13 and 25 total participants. I know some of the online people just because of what they said. It's like, oh, that's that person. But let's pretend that that didn't happen. But I don't know who they are. So there's somewhere between 13 and 25 people. There was some overlap. But I knew that my subsample of interview participants was what I considered very representative. There were grad students, postdocs, graduate students, academic professionals, pre-tenure professor, tenure professor, so I feel like I got all of them. And then for my LAs, I had current LAs, postbacks, and former LAs who had already graduated, so I got the whole spectrum of men and women, sorry, because we're adults. So I feel like my subsample of interview participants was representative, so I feel like the sample as a whole is also representative. I do not think I had a biased sample in any way. In addition to that, I did 2 in-class observations, and I did an artifact analysis, which basically meant digging up files on my computer and the director's computer that we had both seen before and be like, yeah, that's part of it. So discussing the trustworthiness of the study, again, I already gave my positionality statement, which I hope establishes my trustworthiness as a researcher. But as far as the trustworthiness of the study itself, we don't talk about generalizability with qualitative research. There are 4 other things that we often talk about: credibility, fittingness, auditability, and confirmability. Credibility is the easiest one to think about. It's a measurement of internal validity, how faithful the description of the phenomenon is. And I feel like I did that extensively through the use of quotes. There were so many quotes in that results section, so hopefully I demonstrated that. And through those, I hope I reached triangulation, which says that a single method of data gathering in qualitative research will never give you the right answer. So by doing interview surveys, artifacts, and observations, I hope more to triangulate. But I hope I zeroed in on the truth. In saturation, more data I got, I did not find more and more new themes. So pretty much people started to repeat themselves, and that happened to find to say, I have a good feeling that this is good enough. Maybe the 11th person would have said something different, but I didn't have that. So there you go. Next is the fittingness. This is what we use instead of generalizability. It is a measure of external validity. It's really about applicability. You cannot use this study for, someone who doesn't have an LA program, but they only have their graduate students doing their teaching. Not the same program at all, does not have a large applicability, it is not a fitting study. So that's really what instead of generalizability, we often talk about fittingness. If there is a high level of fittingness, someone else can use the study. If there's not, then that's at the discretion of the reader to decide if it's good or not. But that's out of my hands, really. Auditability is, can someone arrive at the same conclusion? And again, with qualitative research, very, very difficult to say if that's true, but I laid out my analysis in Appendix E, which hopefully was extensive enough for people to believe what I'm doing, and confirmability, the criterion of neutrality, and this is really where my positionality comes in. I will try to be neutral despite all those things, despite my links to the program. The link to the program was what inspired me to do this study, so that's a good thing, but even that, I'm gonna try not to fudge the data just because I'm part of it. By trying, I didn't, I promise. Would have been done a lot faster if I just fudged the data. All right, so moving on to my findings. No one understands research in physics with the intention of winning a prize. It's the joy of discovering something no one knew before. I feel like it's kind of true. I have no chance of winning a Nobel Prize in physics, but I still love doing it. So what I tried to find something new, I used affective coding. Affective meaning very much with the emotional part of you. So it focused on values, conflicts, and emotions expressed by the participants. So I went through my many pages of data, and in round one, the initial coding phase, I used values and process coding. Values coding, kind of as the name suggests, focuses on values and beliefs and perceptions of the participants. And process coding uses gerunds, or words that end with ing, to see how people react to certain stimuli. So I used those two methods, and I had those two methods in mind when I picked out the actual data from my transcripts. Then, and the second thing, once I cut up my data basically, I used pattern coding, where I assigned a meta code, where I kind of lumped things together and I said, okay, these few have to do with confidence, and these two have to do with support. And so I went ahead and I used pattern coding to assign that meta code. Round three was focus coding, where I took those meta codes and I actually put them into a theme. So codes are just very short phrases. A theme is a whole sentence. Pretty much different. So I took those meta codes and said, okay, what's a sentence that can describe this? And then round four was the overarching themes, where I had about 30 themes. And so I said, okay, let's regroup these once again. And what are the five big overarching themes? What I ended up finding that spanned all through my data. So 4 rounds of coding and analysis. So I hope that those 4 were rigorous enough to prove that I did good. And then these are the 5 overarching themes that I found. And it being qualitative data, these are not exclusive. Which is why there's a big arrow that goes across, because they do overlap at times. And I did my best to separate them as much as possible, knowing that they will still overlap. So the 5 things I found: that student attitudes towards classes with LAs were overall positive. LAs are seen as valuable resources to their faculty mentors. LAs and mentors both note personal and professional enrichment through their pairings. LAs note personal growth and enrichment as part of through their work. And those involved with the LA program find it inspiring. That made me happy. So going into these, so my first overarching thing was students in course with LAs have generally positive attitudes, and these were the sub-themes that came up in those. So this was round 3 coding. These were the themes that I found in round 3, and the overarching theme I found in round 4 was positive student attitudes. I won't read everything on here because, you already read it, hopefully, but so we just note things like much deeper understanding through application. Students feel more supportive in a safe and comfortable environment. They're able to engage in the content more, form deep connections, a feeling of community in the classroom through these collaborations that the LAs lead, increased metacognition for the students and for the LAs. And the last one is there's still some pushback from students. Not everyone is happy, but what can you do? It's going to happen. Not everyone's going to like every single style. So I'm not too concerned, because overall, very, very good. And again, I'm not going to read all of these to you. These are just some of the more inspiring quotes that I pulled out. The one I like the best is this one, which is why it's a big N in the middle. Rather than studying to the exam, they're better at learning. They mean the students. They're better at learning and making sure they got the material and they're able to apply it. And then I also really like this one. That was so freaking funny. Many professors expressed that same sentiment. This one I just think said it best. Some of them, being the students, clearly are more comfortable asking someone their age for help. Asking an old spelling professor wearing a cardigan, sweater, covered in cat hair maybe isn't as fun. I couldn't not include that. That just said it best. So really, students are feeling much more supported because of the LAs, because there's someone there that's sort of their own age, because there's just another resource to have in class. Students like it. They're here to learn. They will tell you that they're paying thousands of dollars for us to teach them, so they feel like we are teaching them better, which is good. Next, the second theme I found was LAs are viewed as valuable resources by their faculty mentors. And this one actually I really liked, because when I first started with the LA program, I thought they were just kind of tools to facilitate the active learning, and that's it. I did not think that they were going to be such a valuable resource to their professors. I didn't think it was going to be this really great relationship with the mentors, and that the LAs would go on to curriculum development and doing research on it. So, I mean, Rachel totally thought it was going to happen, but I did not think that it was going to go that far. So, Rachel got it right. But this made me really, really happy that, you know, professors don't just see their LAs as tools. They see them as really, really valuable resources. Maybe not quite as peers, but, you know. So their opinions on curriculum choice is valued and actively sought out by the instructors. Support to implement the active learning. Again, that's the one that I thought it was pretty much just going to be there. Support to implement the active learning, all this other stuff. Helping establish expectations for student learning. I didn't think that was going to come up. And providing a unique perspective on the classroom environment. I can attest to this myself when I used LAs. My LA would come and be like, hey, them in the back, they're cranky. Like, watch out, kind of thing. So, really, very much invaluable student perspective. I like having the perspective of another LAMP trainee to bounce ideas off of. And then this one, I really love this one. They're not only learning content better, they mean student, but they're building bridges with the content better, and they're learning the pedagogy and how to best deliver the content. It's, oh, no, sorry, it is the LAs. It's a trifecta right there. So not only are LAs doing better with delivering the content, but they're also learning the content better themselves. Oh, and sorry, the one right above it too. I can pretty confidently say that without an inspiring LA collaborator, there's no way I would have made even a fraction of the improvements to the course on my own that we've made together. That was the goal, so it's good that someone said it. I promise it wasn't me who said it. Third overarching thing was LAs and faculty mentors both experience personal and professional enrichment through their parents. They build strong partnership. Instructors are more mindful now that they kind of have shared stage with someone and explain their reasoning. Some mentors were initially uncertain about the pairings. I think at least 3 noted that they were kind of like, maybe it's not going to be the best, but then really ended up enjoying the experience afterwards. Faculty members have permission to prioritize their curriculum and reflecting on their teaching practice. Again, inviting someone else into the classroom. You kind of have to be a couple steps ahead, so gave them that space to actually think about what they're doing instead of just doing the same thing year in and year out, which, you know, happens because life is really busy. And again, I'll just point out some of my favorite quotes. All these are in the paper. With my learning assistant's encouragement and help, I completely revised my course. That just made me happy because, again, it shows that the LAs are stepping up. Again, not just being a tool, but really making a big difference by offering that encouragement. In the middle, being a mentor has been rewarding in ways that I didn't expect. And in the top right corner, I really, really love this. I believe I quoted this LA a lot because they had very good things to say. I have been more comfortable seeking help and guidance for troubles, and I will continue to do so. Having a faculty member nothing but positive and uplifting. Not only did she guide and motivate me to be a better mentor, but she has also motivated me to pursue my dreams regardless of pitfalls. For that, I will be forever grateful. So that LA really got a lot out of their experience. And I would say that they're doing very well at the moment. LA's notes personal satisfaction and growth through their work as LAs. So one of the findings that I did in my pilot study from 2018 that LAs found a new appreciation and understanding of teaching that has also been echoed here. So in their work, they realized how much actually goes into preparing a good class. And in doing so, that can have an effect, a very lasting effect on their career goals. They've noted expanded social networks on campus, knowing more people, being able to talk, and that has, you know, lifted them up a bit. And they have increased metacognition, which is another theme that I found in my 2018 study as well. So some of these are being reiterated, which is, I guess, good for consistency. Let's see. Bottom right. Since becoming an LA, I've changed my career path from becoming a doctor to becoming a professor. Teaching was just too much fun to give up. I realized that it was something that I wanted to incorporate in my everyday life. And it was so great to have pedagogy class and other LAs to discuss my newfound passions with. So this LA really got a lot out of it. It's actually going to change her career. This LA up here was already enrolled in our postbac program, and it's just reaffirmed his desire to go into teaching as well. So we get it all across the board. There's one LA who said, yeah, I can't do this because it's just too much. It happens. We're not here to convert everyone. But it had a lasting effect on that LA, definitely. She knows what she does not want to do. So, that can be good too. But really good testament that one of C. Holder's initial thing was to recruit teachers and to keep them well. Seems like we at least had a convert that doesn't want to go into teaching. No, she wants to go into higher education, but a teacher is a teacher, so I'll mark that as a good column. And lastly, the LA program, those involved with the LA program are inspired by it. So LAs and their mentors are excited about it too, and they want the effects of the program to extend further. So they love doing it. They want to mentor students even when they don't have a class. They would have loved to get involved earlier, which in their career. So at least we're here now, so the next generation can come in and get going from the start. So, in conclusion, you'd be amazed how much research you can get done when you have no life whatsoever. So Ready Player One. If you haven't read the book, you should. If you haven't seen the movie, you should. They're very different but the book, right? That's true. It's a lot done when you have no life. So, future work. We're not summing up yet. So, as I mentioned earlier, this was a qualitative case study, so I did not look at the quantitative work. Someone else can do that when they have more time, and once we finally get that data released in its full amount, so people can look at course grades, DFWI rates, and GPAs. Another reason why I didn't include this is because we kind of already know from literature that DFWI rates go down, GPAs go up. So I wasn't too interested in looking at reaffirming something that has already happened, but we can when that data is readily available, just to make sure that's happening, but we kind of know what to expect there. We can do longitudinal studies, so we can track the progress of the LAs in their careers and in their classes. We can also track the professional development of the mentors as well. Who's involved with an LA, what they do with their curriculum, how many ECTL workshops do they go to, for example. So longitudinal studies for both LAs and mentors are possible. We can also always expand the sample. We're always getting new LAs, so that'll naturally expand the sample. And then the people I did not include in the study, I did not include LAs who had only worked for one semester. So I was interested in the perspectives on how things are changing over multiple semesters, so I really tried to focus on the ones who had been in LA for at least one semester. So we can look at the people, the first-time LAs as well, who have only been doing it for one semester, and also the people who left after one semester, barring people who graduated. We can also look at demographics. Does the LA program help underrepresented groups more so than the majority group? I would probably say yes, because we already know active learning benefits the underrepresented groups a whole lot. It just makes sense that the LA program would do the same, but we can see what are the effects of being a mentor on someone from the majority versus the minority. That's always possible. And then lastly, if you want to go really big, you can do a meta-analysis and do a cross-case study. Since we now have this one case study, we can be included in more case studies. I do think this case study was the first of its kind. All the literature, I will say this, all the literature that I was able to find on the LA program strictly deals with the quantitative aspect. How are students doing? I was not able to find anything about how did the LAs feel and how did the mentors feel. Doesn't mean it's not out there, but if it is, I could not find it and I looked. So now that this first of its kind is out there, someone down the road, way down the road, can do a meta-analysis of all those case studies and find out what's going on through in LA programs all across the country. So now, in conclusion, I wanted to know how the LAs and the mentors felt about the experience. So I carried out an evaluated qualitative case study using surveys, interviews, and observations. And what I found that people generally give it a thumbs up. Just to sum up. So I want to end with a quote from Gail. Gail did really good, wonderful stuff. It was the best. She says, overall, my experience as in LA was amazing. The skills I learned to make me a better leader, mentor, and student are traits that I will carry with me throughout my educational and professional careers. I learned the importance of patience, perseverance, and positivity. All traits that will help me succeed a medical career. I would be an LA gang 1,000 times over, and I would embrace and enjoy every second of it. So, if that's not a gold star, I don't know what is. So, there's references for the help and helping. I want to thank my committee for helping me rush through this master's degree. So thank you, Peter, for stepping in for me when he just up and left me in the summer. Thank you, Rachel, for everything. And thank you, Mike, for being here and helped while I put my physics on hold.
It's not easy to find this ring.
Yeah. Thanks for finding the ring.
Yeah.